Welcome to Quick Speak, the English podcast. Today, we are going to talk about friendships. Friendships are usually a very positive part of our lives. They can bring happiness, support, and shared experiences. But sometimes friendships can become difficult, challenging, or even harmful to our well-being. In this discussion, our aim is to look closely at what makes a friendship become harmful. We'll explore how these types of friendships can affect us, and we will talk about ways to understand and manage these situations.
Friendships are indeed important relationships, and understanding their different forms is valuable. It's true that while many friendships are sources of strength, some can unfortunately become sources of stress or, well, unhappiness.
Let's begin by defining what we mean when a friendship is described as difficult or harmful. It's more than just having a disagreement or a misunderstanding now and then, right?
Exactly. That's a good starting point. What is the difference between a normal friendship issue and something more consistently harmful?
Well, that's what I was wondering. How do we tell them apart?
A consistently harmful friendship, often described as toxic, is one where you experience regular stress, conflict, and a basic lack of mutual respect. In healthy friendships, people feel valued, they feel supported, and often feel better after spending time together.
Okay.
In contrast, a toxic friendship tends to leave you feeling tired, anxious, or even cause you to doubt yourself or your own feelings.
So the key difference is the consistency, the pattern.
Yes, the key difference lies in the consistent feeling and the overall pattern of behavior in the relationship.
What are some specific examples of these patterns or behaviors that are often seen in toxic friendships?
Well, studies and experts describe several key signs. One is a significant imbalance in effort.
Imbalance, like one person does all the work.
Exactly. This means that one person is always giving, always reaching out, always listening, while the other person gives very little back. You might feel like you're doing all the work to keep the friendship going.
Right. That sounds draining. What else?
Another sign is a lack of respect for personal boundaries.
Boundaries. What does that look like in practice?
It means the friend might ignore your limits on your time, perhaps calling you at all hours or demanding your attention when you know you're busy. They might push conversations into topics you've said you are not comfortable discussing, or disregard your need for personal space.
Okay, so not respecting your no.
Precisely. Emotional manipulation is also a common characteristic. One form of this is gaslighting.
Gaslighting, I've heard that term. What exactly is it?
It's a behavior where someone tries to make you question your own memory, feelings, or sanity. For example, they might deny saying something you clearly remember,
Oh, wow.
or tell you that you are too sensitive or crazy for reacting to their behavior. It can make you feel confused and unsure of your own reality.
That sounds really damaging.
It can be. Jealousy and competition can also make a friendship toxic. Instead of being happy for your successes, a friend might seem unhappy, try to minimize what you've achieved, or act competitively in ways that make you uncomfortable.
So instead of support, you get
Yeah.
competition.
Yes. And it sounds like the behavior isn't always bad either, making it unpredictable. Is that also a sign?
That unpredictability you mentioned. Yeah.
Yes. That unpredictability is often mentioned. A friend might be very charming and kind in one moment, and then suddenly become critical or hostile without a clear reason.
That must create a lot of insecurity.
It does. You never quite know what to expect, which keeps you feeling off balance and, unsafe in the relationship. Additionally, toxic friends may focus almost entirely on their own problems and needs. They might talk about themselves constantly but disappear or show little interest when you are going through a difficult time and need support.
So it's very one-sided again.
Very much so.
Yeah.
And over time, experiencing this kind of behavior regularly might start to feel normal.
You just get used to it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which can make it hard to see how damaging it actually is.
That's an important point. Like a slow leak, you might not notice the energy draining away until you feel completely exhausted.
Exactly. The psychological effect of the inconsistent, unpredictable behavior is quite strong. It prevents a stable foundation of trust from forming, which is, well, essential for a healthy connection.
Thinking about how draining this can be, what is the impact of these kinds of friendships on a person's overall well-being, their mental and physical health?
Research indicates there's a clear link between being in toxic relationships, including friendships, and negative effects on health and well-being. People in these situations often report higher levels of anxiety, feelings of sadness or depression, and chronic stress.
Chronic stress. That can't be good.
No, definitely not. Studies have looked at this over time. For instance, some research following young people found that those who struggled with difficult friendships during their teenage years reported more symptoms of depression and anxiety later in life.
So it can have long-term effects.
It highlights how patterns formed early can potentially have long-term effects, yes.
Interesting.
However, it's also worth noting that research can sometimes present different perspectives. For example, one study in Indonesia didn't find a direct link between the reported quality of friendships and mental health symptoms among the students they surveyed.
Oh, so it's not always a direct cause and effect.
It reminds us that relationships are complex, and how people are affected can depend on many factors, including cultural context and individual differences.
Yes, it's important to consider these different findings, but generally the information points to negative impacts, right?
Generally, yes. Beyond mental health, the stress from toxic friendships can also show up physically,
Physically. Like how?
causing symptoms like headaches, stomach problems, or muscle tension. Our emotional state and physical health are closely connected, you see.
Wow, okay. Mind and body.
And toxic friendships can also worsen existing difficulties someone might have, perhaps related to past experiences or challenges. And sadly, being in a toxic friendship can make it harder to trust others or form healthy relationships in the future. It can create a pattern or cycle that is difficult to break.
A cycle. That sounds hard to escape.
What this highlights is the cumulative damage that happens over time. It's not just one bad argument. It's the constant exposure to stress and negativity that builds up and significantly affects a person's emotional strength and their ability to build positive connections later.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's interesting to consider how we have viewed friendship throughout history. Has the idea of a toxic friendship always been discussed?
Well, friendship has been considered very important for a very long time. Ancient philosophers like Aristotle wrote about the deep value of good friendships. Throughout history, close friendships have been seen as essential for a good life, providing intellectual stimulation and emotional support, like those famous intellectual gatherings in salons in the 18th century. Friendship itself was seen as a great and positive force.
So the idea of it being toxic is newer?
Yes, the specific concept of a friendship being toxic, in the way we are discussing it now, focusing on psychological harm and relationship dynamics, is a more recent idea. It developed more as psychology and research into personal relationships grew, especially in the 20th century.
And the word toxic wasn't originally for relationships.
That's right. The word toxic originally described poisonous substances or harmful physical environments. Applying it to relationships became more common as we developed a greater understanding of emotional health and the ways relationships can negatively impact it.
Culture must play a role too, mustn't it? How we see these things.
Absolutely. What is considered normal or acceptable behavior in a friendship can differ greatly between cultures. In cultures that place a high value on the group and close-knit relationships, behaviors that might seem controlling or overly involved in a culture that emphasizes individualism might be seen as normal expressions of care, loyalty, or strong connection.
That's a really important point. So something that feels toxic to me might seem normal somewhere else?
Potentially, yes. Understanding these cultural viewpoints is important when you are trying to evaluate a friendship. What looks like toxicity in one context might be understood differently in another. It's not always a simple judgment.
That adds an important layer of understanding. So, given all of this, what are some specific warning signs someone might notice? Those red flags.
Learning to spot these signs early can be very helpful in managing the situation and protecting your well-being. Information often lists several clear warning signs.
Okay, what should people look out for?
One is consistently one-sided communication. You find yourself always listening to your friends' problems, offering support, asking about their life.
But they don't do the same for you.
Exactly. When you need to talk about something important, they change the subject, make it about themselves, or just don't seem truly interested in listening.
Right. What's another one?
Another major sign is when your boundaries are ignored or disrespected. If you've clearly stated limits about time, topics, personal space, and your friend repeatedly goes against them, it's a clear warning sign.
Like we discussed before, ignoring your no.
Yes. Constant insults or criticism are also very damaging, even if the friend says that you're just joking or teasing.
Just kidding, but it hurts.
Right. If their words consistently make you feel bad about yourself, damage your self-esteem, or make you feel small, it's a harmful pattern.
And how you feel afterwards, you mentioned that earlier.
Yes, perhaps one of the most telling signs is how you feel after you spend time with this person. If you consistently feel drained of energy anxious, worried, or guilty after interacting with them.
Instead of feeling good?
Exactly. Instead of feeling happy, supported, or refreshed, that's a significant indicator that something is wrong in the dynamic.
Are there other signs too?
Other warning signs can include competitive behavior, like giving backhanded compliments or downplaying your achievements.
Backhanded compliments like, oh, that dress looks nice on you. It's surprising you can wear that style.
Something like that, yes. Also, passive-aggressive actions like giving you the silent treatment when they are upset or making comments that embarrass you in front of other people are also red flags.
So it's about seeing these patterns, not just one-off things.
The key is to look for patterns. One instance of a friend being tired or having a bad day is normal. But if these negative behaviors happen regularly, if they form a consistent pattern, that is when it becomes a sign that the friendship is likely harmful, not just going through a difficult phase.
Recognizing the pattern is crucial. Many people might recognize that feeling of being drained, I think. Understanding that feeling can be a warning sign is important.
Definitely.
Another concept that often comes up is codependency and enabling. How do these fit into toxic friendships?
Toxic friendships can sometimes involve a dynamic described as codependency. This is a pattern where one person, sometimes called the giver, feels a strong need to help or take care of the other person, the taker.
So the giver gets something out of it too, like feeling needed.
Yes, the giver's sense of self-worth can become tied to being needed by the taker. In this dynamic, the boundaries between the two people can become very unclear. The giver might neglect their own needs, their own life, or their own health because they are so focused on trying to manage the problems or emotional state of the taker.
And the taker.
The taker, in turn, relies heavily on the giver for support, validation, or even practical help without taking responsibility for their own life or actions.
So the giver feels important because they are helping, and the taker relies on that help, which keeps the pattern going.
Exactly. The dynamic reinforces itself. The giver feels essential, and the taker feels justified in their dependence and demands because the giver is always there. This pattern prevents both people from developing healthy independence.
And enabling is related to this. How?
Yes. Enabling refers to behaviors that allow the toxic patterns to continue. This might involve covering up for the friend's negative or harmful actions.
Making excuses for them.
Yes, making excuses for their behavior to others, or even to yourself, or maybe joining in negative habits with them.
Oh.
Enabling behaviors keep the cycle of dysfunction going. They make it harder for the toxic friend to face consequences and harder for the enabling friend to prioritize their own well-being and set limits. It often comes from a place of thinking you're being loyal, but it actually stops growth.
That's a tough dynamic. Let's consider how the digital world, especially social media, influences friendships. Can it make toxic patterns worse?
The way we connect online has definitely changed friendships, and yes, it can sometimes amplify or complicate toxic dynamics.
How so?
Well, for one, online platforms can sometimes encourage conflict to play out publicly rather than being resolved privately. People might leave hurtful comments or get into online arguments that escalate quickly.
Right. Things can blow up online.
Also, seeing carefully presented versions of friends' lives online. The perfect pictures can lead to unhealthy social comparison and feelings of jealousy or inadequacy.
That highlight reel effect.
Exactly. People often share only the highlights, which can make others feel like their own life isn't as good.
And it's harder to get away, maybe.
Digital connections can also make it difficult to create distance from a toxic friend. Even if you stop seeing someone in person, seeing their activity online, or receiving messages can prolong the emotional tie and continue that draining effect.
Constant access.
And sometimes there's a feeling of needing to present a certain image online, maybe showing you are still friends, even if the real connection is difficult. This can lead to what some call performative friendships online.
Where looking like friends is more important than being friends.
Essentially, yes. The appearance matters more than the actual quality of the connection. Digital tools provide new ways for these old patterns to continue and affect us.
So if someone recognizes these signs in a friendship, maybe online or offline, what is a crucial step they can take?
Setting and maintaining boundaries is a fundamental step. Whether you are trying to improve the friendship or decide it's best to create distance or even end it.
Boundaries. We talked about them being disrespected as a sign, so how do you set them?
Boundaries are essentially limits you put in place to protect your own emotional energy, time, and mental space. These can be different types. Physical boundaries might involve deciding not to meet up as frequently or avoiding certain places together.
Okay.
Emotional boundaries could mean deciding not to discuss certain topics that are too sensitive or upsetting with this friend.
Right, like saying, I don't want to talk about that.
Exactly. And digital boundaries might involve muting their posts, limiting contact online, or unfollowing them.
How can someone set these boundaries clearly? It sounds difficult.
It can be. It's important to be clear and direct when stating your limits. It's helpful to do this calmly and to focus on your own needs and feelings using I statements.
I statements.
Yes. For example, instead of saying, you always talk about yourself, you could say, I feel overwhelmed when the conversation is only about one person's problems. This focuses on your experience without blaming.
Okay, focusing on I feel instead of you always, hey. Are there specific strategies?
Using I statements is key. Another strategy can be gradually reducing the amount of time you spend with a friend. This can help you see if they respect your new limits without a big confrontation.
Testing the waters, maybe?
Sort of. Seeking support from other trusted friends or talking to a counselor can also be beneficial. They can help you practice what you want to say and feel more confident.
Getting back up.
Yes. Setting healthy boundaries isn't just about protecting yourself. It also helps you understand what healthy, respectful relationships should look like. It shows you value mutual respect, and it helps you see if the friendship can become healthier.
It's a step towards self-protection and clarity.
Exactly.
It sounds like setting boundaries can help clarify the path forward. What are the potential benefits if someone decides they really need to end a toxic friendship?
Ending a friendship, even a difficult one, can be emotionally challenging, of course. But letting go of toxic ties can lead to many significant benefits for your well-being.
Like what? What changes?
Many people find their mental health improves considerably. The regular source of stress, anxiety, and negativity is removed, which can lead to reduced feelings of worry and sadness.
That makes sense. Less stress.
And self-esteem often increases because the person is no longer exposed to constant criticism, put-downs, or manipulative behavior.
You start to feel better about yourself.
Yes. Ending a toxic friendship can also create space for personal growth. The energy that was being used to navigate the difficult friendship can now be redirected towards positive things, exploring new hobbies, focusing on goals, building healthier connections.
So you get your energy back.
It can help you become more resilient too. Letting go can truly provide a sense of freedom and return energy that you may not have realized was being taken away. It allows you to prioritize self-care and invest in relationships that are truly supportive.
That sounds really positive. After ending a toxic friendship, actively building healthy friendships becomes important, doesn't it? How does someone go about doing that?
Finding healthy connections involves looking for people who share similar positive values, like mutual respect, kindness, and genuine listening.
So looking for the good qualities.
Yes. It can be helpful to explore different groups or activities that you enjoy, like joining a class, a sports team, a volunteer group. These settings offer opportunities to meet new people in positive shared environments.
Finding people with shared interests.
Exactly. And it is important to allow friendships to develop naturally over time. Healthy connections grow from simple shared activities and conversations into deeper levels of trust and sharing as you get to know each other better. It takes time.
No rushing it.
Right. Building a network of supportive friends is really essential for long-term happiness and even physical health. Research shows strong social connections are linked to living longer, better physical health, and feeling more satisfied with life.
So healthy relationships are fundamental for well-being.
Yes, not just a nice extra, but fundamental.
This brings us to a discussion that seems quite common now. How exactly should someone end a toxic friendship if they decide that's the necessary step? There seem to be different ideas.
Yes, there is often discussion now about prioritizing one's own peace and well-being. One viewpoint is that stepping away from relationships that are consistently harmful is an act of self-respect, necessary for personal health.
Protecting your peace.
Right. However, there's also a concern that avoiding all difficult conversations or conflict might prevent someone from developing resilience and skills for navigating relationship challenges.
So there's a balance, maybe?
Well, one way people end connections is by simply stopping contact without explanation, often called ghosting.
Ghosting, just disappearing.
Yes. It might seem easier because it avoids a potentially uncomfortable conversation, but it can leave the other person confused or hurt, and it can also leave you with unresolved feelings.
So it might not be the best solution.
Not always. The alternative is a more direct approach, having a conversation about needing distance. This offers a chance for clarity or closure, although it does carry the risk that the friend might react negatively, becoming defensive or angry.
That sounds difficult too. Confrontation.
It can be. Finding a balanced approach might be the most helpful for many people. This could involve having a conversation that is respectful but also firm about why you need to create distance.
Clear but kind.
Yes. You can state your needs and boundaries clearly and be prepared to maintain those boundaries even if the other person doesn't respond well. It depends on what feels safest and most appropriate for you and what your goal is in ending it.
Right, considering your own safety and goals. So, we have discussed what characterizes friendships that become harmful, the ways they impact our health, how to recognize signs, dynamics like codependency, the digital world's effects, and the importance of boundaries and healthy connections.
Yes, understanding these aspects is really important. It emphasizes the value of seeking out and maintaining healthy, balanced relationships built on mutual respect, as they are indeed vital for our well-being.
Absolutely. As you think about everything we've discussed today, consider this idea. How might recognizing these patterns and signs of toxicity in friendships help you identify and navigate challenging dynamics in other types of relationships in your life?
That's a valuable thought. Perhaps with family members or colleagues at work, these patterns can sometimes appear in different forms elsewhere.
Exactly. Something to reflect on. Thank you for joining us for this discussion. If you found this helpful and want to improve your English while learning about interesting topics, we encourage you to subscribe. You can also visit our website in the description below to find more learning materials, such as vocabulary lists and exercises based on today's conversation.